Love visiting with this guy as the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. It is T. Scott Jones, Banks & Jones. Counselor, how are you, sir?
Oh, fantastic. I mean, what a beautiful day here in East Tennessee. So just proud to get an opportunity to join you, gentlemen. And I mean, we're going to talk about some interesting stuff. And obviously, we're coming off a victory over the mighty Crimson Tide.
Yeah, what'd you think about that? Tennessee, I made the argument yesterday that it was the best 7-day period since 1992 when Tennessee beat Florida and Georgia in consecutive weeks. To beat Florida and Alabama in consecutive weeks, pretty hefty stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, stringing together success. And I mean, everybody at the end of the day, they've been complaining about, it's not a blowout. Well, Alabama's not Kent State, and neither is Florida. And when you deal with situations like that at the end of the season, you know what we see? We see the W. Think about the 98 championship year. Think about the game at Syracuse. Think about the fabulous Sterner fumble and the gift to Arkansas. So perhaps we gave it back to them the week before the Florida game. But that being said, I mean, it's tough to play at that high of a level for that long. And at the end of the day, all that matters is the W.
Yep, I guess absolutely. The equivalent would be Florida and Alabama counselor tried to take this to trial. And they lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, no points for second place with regards to that. So, I mean, it's like a drag race. I mean, there is no consolation trophy. This isn't AYSO soccer. We don't pat you on the head and say, good job. I mean, I think we got way shed of that champions of life mantra. I mean, I'm way done. Hey, Butch, we enjoyed the cigar, big boy. I mean, how's life working out for you?
Absolutely. All right, so let's get into this field charging thing. What are your thoughts on that? Just as a fan, I think it's exciting, but now the SEC levies fines against your school, and they've done that before. Let's just go in with a kind of a broad scope and give me your thoughts on charging the field.
Well, I looked up a couple of things, in preparation for today's show, and I'm looking at, the original, if you will, charging the field SEC sanctions. They originally came down in 2004. They were modified, increased penalties in 2015, and then subsequently in 2023. And Sir Isaac Newton, we've all seen, of course, the apple falling from the tree. Not only is it dangerous, and I'm not somebody to sit there and say, hey, life has to be all about safety, but I'm pretty aware of gravity, and those goalposts aren't light. And when they come down, I mean, the potential for somebody getting hurt is there. And, I talked to Chris Wampler and I talked to Toby Champion this week. They're both good friends of mine. And obviously VFLs. And one of the things that sort of was a common thread amongst everyone that I'd talked to that played ball over there and worn the mighty orange was act like you've been there before. And, 1982, 11 seasons, and we had not won. And, yeah, I can understand that. I was there during the World's Fair. I think we actually had to buy a TV camera because it got dumped into Fort Loudon. And then when we have the victory in 22, and it'd been, a 15-year drought, something like that. I mean, I can understand that. But, guys, I mean, it was only 2 years, or really only 1 year. It bothers me with regards to that. I mean, I just think the importance of being professional and acting like we are at the level that we ought to be.
I agree with that, Caleb.
Yeah, Counselor, I want to even go a little deeper on this because I have a very strong hot take opinion on this that a lot of fans, even of our own, didn't like when I said this about the Alabama receiver Jameson Williams a couple of years ago. But just I say this. If you're a fan and you willingly step on the field, your rights end. And I don't believe that there should be any protections for a fan that may get cold-cocked by a player if they're on the field and the players are walking off the field. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree, too. I mean, you're assuming the risk when you get on there. I mean, we've seen situations where fans have gotten on the field before the game was over, and you had folks approaching the end zone, things of that nature. And when you basically trespass, because you're a trespasser when you're actually on the field, you're no longer a invitee. You're not a commercial invitee. You didn't pay your fee. Your fee does not encompass actually getting on the turf at Shields-Watkins Field. So, I mean, I guess it would be the delineation between Neyland Stadium and Shields-Watkins Field with regards to actually stepping on there. So I think you sort of take your life in your own hands when you do that. And, it just concerns me because somebody eventually is really going to get hurt. And then, we saw it happen with Vanderbilt in the Alabama victory. And then, of course, Arkansas. I mean, I get it was a pretty big thrill for the Razorbacks, a couple of weeks ago with regards to us. And then, Caleb, it posits the question, can we just go ahead and have Arkansas write the check to Alabama? Because, I mean, why don't we just cut out the middleman? And because, under the SEC rules, and a lot of folks think, oh, that money goes to the conference. It only goes to the conference if it is a non-conference game, i.e., we're playing Oregon and we beat a team and we tear the goalpost down. But when it's a conference game, it actually goes to the opposing SEC team.
Well, let me ask you this. So if somebody came to you and they said, I've heard about you on Off the Hook Sports, and I think you're the best lawyer ever. And I just wanted to say to you that I charged the field, and an Alabama player punched me in the mouth, dislocated my jaw, blah, blah, blah. It was awful. It's terrible. I want to sue them. What would be the first thing out of your mouth as far as legal advice?
I'd probably go, here's your sign. I mean, you made a bad decision with regards to that. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I've got a sign behind my desk at the office when I'm physically in my office and says, you can't fix stupid. And, everything seems like a good idea and it's all fun and games till somebody gets hurt. And so under that set of circumstances, I think you've sort of assumed the risk. I mean, I guess everything would have to be, looked at in perspective with regards to what was done. But, it is a contest, and it is a contest of wills between two universities. You don't have any business on that field. And I mean, we also look at the conduct of the fans. They've talked about, and let's draw a parallel, the Texas-Georgia game, right? Y'all saw all that stuff hit the field with regards to the call. And regardless of whether or not you feel the officials got it right or wrong, I mean, you start throwing debris upon the field, you start impeding the athletic contest. I mean, honestly, I think everyone that threw one of those bottles or one of those items on the field, hearkening back to Lane Kiffin and the golf ball and the mustard, that's all kind of funny now because nobody got hurt. Well, it's not really funny because somebody's eventually going to get hurt. And I think, honestly, that if they can identify you and you did it, just like what the SEC is talking about with the Texas-Georgia situation, you ought to be banned from those athletic contests for at least a year for your first offense. And then if you cannot conduct yourself in a manner suitable to be an SEC fan, then perhaps you need to stay home. I mean, that's just the way it ought to be.
I agree.
Counselor, quick interesting point on that. We all remember the great Malice at the Palace Pacers-Pistons brawl of 2004 where Ron Artest went into the stands and beat up the wrong guy, but they wanted NBA players charged in that, and the AG in Michigan at the time looked at it and it's like, no, the fans were the instigators, and he charged all the fans and not the players for the incident. And my thoughts to you are, I want to know what your thoughts are. Should there be, you brought up trespassing. What about even like rioting charges? Aren't these borderline riots? I mean, you are destroying property, aren't you, when you run onto the field and tear down the goalpost?
Well, I mean, did y'all see the photos of the field after everybody got done? I mean, entire sections of the power tee gone, everything of that nature. I mean, this isn't artificial turf. This is actual grass now that we've got on Shields-Watkins Field. And when you tear that up, think about the grounds crew and all the work that they've got to do to try to get that field ready. I mean, thank God we've got an off week. And so we get an opportunity to have a break and they can do some, stitching up of the field. But I mean, it's kind of sad, when you see people tear up their own stuff. I mean, what are you doing? I mean, really, what are you doing? I mean, you just got to question it.
Now, I agree. Now, let me play devil's advocate for a second because I was on the field at Sanford Stadium when Georgia broke the streak against Tennessee and they charged the field. And I'm a pretty decent sized guy, but I really felt like I had no control of where I was going. And I was in the media and I was supposed to be there. You can be on the field with 5 minutes left. And also during that game, I know that one of the support staffs was hit with a liquor bottle in the side of the head. So in that particular case, not to make it just about me, but in that particular case, if somebody's supposed to be there, could you then, I mean, nothing happened to me, but it did happen to the support staff person. Could he have brought charges against the university for not having better security?
I think it would obviously be sort of case by case basis. They would have to be on notice. The problem against bringing, against a state university, we're a land grant university. So effectively, when you sue the university, you're suing the sovereign or suing the state of Tennessee, so to speak. So it delineates it a little bit than perhaps private universities, say Notre Dame or some other school along those lines. But here, it's going to have to be kind of on a case-by-case basis. And then you look too, right? We never used to have, if you will, for lack of a better term, shelters over the benches. And, certainly that can be said, hey, that's for shade. That's to, allow the players to stay a little bit cooler, to keep people from stealing signs, things of that nature. But it's also there to protect the players. I mean, it's not like a heavy barrier or something of that nature, but at least it'll bounce a water bottle off. I mean, how many times have you seen, and I mean, I recall back several times where you'll see coaches running down the line, put your helmets on, because there's all this destrus coming just down out of the sky on them. I mean, it's scary stuff when people start throwing that. And I mean, 9.80 feet per second is the basically the gravity, and you're going to have a item, of some weight, and you're like, well, it's not that big a deal. It's a water bottle. Yeah, it is. You hit somebody in the head with it, or you damage somebody. I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous. I mean, I think the SEC's got to figure out a balance. I know that I talked to several officers that were down on the field, and, obviously they're seeing this, mass of humanity come down to tear those goalposts down and to deal with that. And it's kind of like the old Ron White saying where, he looks out in the crowd, and says, I didn't know how many of them it was going to take to kick my butt, but I knew how many of them they were going to use. And in this situation, it was like ants. I mean, one ant's not going to do it. But when you literally have tens of thousands of people and, one officer's not going to just, fend off 500 people trying to come for that goal post and tear it down. And so you've also got, law enforcement danger there. And I know that some of them, basically, they realized they were outgunned and outmanned, and they literally just stepped back because at some point in time, it's kind of like, when the ocean's flooding and it's coming over the seawall, you're not going to stop it. You have to recognize when you get to that point. And, fans joke about, well, I'll write the $100,000 check, or we'll write the $250,000 check, or now, going up to $500,000 for third and subsequent. I mean, where does it stop? I mean, do we see a revisit of this in 24 or 25 as far as the SEC commissioner in the meeting saying, okay, well, it's going to be $1 million each time you do it. So, I mean, at some point in time, we got to behave like adults and not like rabid animals.
I like it. Great stuff as always. Again, T. Scott Jones, Banks & Jones. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you our pressing question, and that is, what do you think will happen with the results of Bench Off 2024, in which I was challenged to see how many times I could bench Caleb's body weight. And he weighs 155 pounds. I'll give you that. And so the levels are 0 to 5, 6 to 12, or 12 plus.
I mean, Caleb's a lean, mean broadcasting machine. So that being said, look at that. Rhymed it together and everything.
I just used the bar. We didn't actually physically touch or anything.
Are you doing any preparation? I mean, I would want to posit that question before we get to it. Are you doing any preparation in anticipation? I mean, I know you're in, reasonably good shape. I mean, you're maintaining yourself, but, in fairness,
I did 2 warm-up sets, and it's the first time because I'm old and my shoulders hurt that I used an actual bar. So I'm usually a machine guy. So I really didn't know what I would be able to do. But we have video evidence later in the program.
When is the bench off? When is it?
I did it this morning, so we're going to share the video of the great bench off later in the show.
I mean, I don't want to consider, because you are the hook of Off the Hook, and I don't want to consider that I'm dishing you, Dave. But I'm thinking 0 to 5. I mean,
0 to 5.
I mean,
All right.
I don't want to be disrespectful, but especially if it was machine weight, I would go 5 to whatever that other number was, 10. But with it being the bar, everything of that nature, I mean, I got to go 0 to 5.
All
okay.
Right. All right. Well, I'll text you later in the later when we share.
Was T. Scott Jones a Flair fan? Were you a Ric Flair fan?
Oh yeah. Woo!
I'm just saying. So
Rolex wearing.
I was watching wrestling during the 90s WCW peak, so I became a big fan of Flair's biggest rival, which was Sting at the time.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, but I was more when Sting was Crow Sting taking on the NWO and Hogan more than it was Flair.
Absolutely. Well, you know what I mean. You gotta love the old school, and you gotta love the remembrance, and all sports, and respecting all athletes, be they actors or be they folks. But guys, fantastic. Thank you all for having me on. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, buddy. I know you got to get to trial, so we appreciate it. Counselor, have a fantastic day, and you're very much appreciated.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you. T. Scott Jones, Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.